All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back again. It's Thursday. Woo! I'm excited because I might have just mixed the fattest drums I've ever mixed, and unfortunately, I didn't record the whole process. But I'm gonna fortunately tell you how I did it. Anyway, if you want to have a copy of these drums, then make sure you support the channel via Patreon. Then you get the project file. Anyway, so let's just get started. Let's get into this. I'm going to take you backwards. So most of you know me now. I always set up a drum bus via an audio track in which I will put my drums in there, and also my drum room goes into this drum bus. So when I put everything together, I then compress it a little bit and saturate it if needed. What will then happen is you get these really fat, like these breathing fat drums, and I'm really a fan of fat breathing drums. Anyway, it's supposed to kind of sound like this. Fat, right? So that's really, really nice. And I kind of took it too far. Just please turn that up on a full system. And it's supposed to sound like this? So I've been absolutely having the best time ever. Anyway, let me show you how I did all this and how I got this final sound to work. Via going backwards. The first thing, or the last thing that I put on the chain is something called the Decapitator, which is from Sound Toys. And what it does is give a little bit of extra flavor. You can do that with this button down here. So you have the A, E, N, T, P, and that stands for no, but they have different types of saturation. So let me show you. I ended up going with E because it sounded the nicest. If I'd put it without it, I'm a sucker for high frequencies, and every single time I can take that blanket off of people's faces or their speakers, then I'm happy. So this thing does a great little job. I'm not driving it at all. I'm not putting any low cut. The only button I touched on this whole thing is E and this tone from dark to bright. That's all it is. So there's nothing really too special going on here. It's a fantastic little plugin to use. And I discovered that after compression, putting it on this E with no drive and a little bit of brightness, it's sexy. But really the star of today's show, or one of the stars, is the Hertz valve compressor. It's a little bit of a different take than the usual compressor. So usual compressor is normally that you have like this. You guys all know the compressor. I mean, it's just, this is a compressor. You have your ratio. There is no ratio button. You have your attack and release with time settings. 1 times, fuck if I know what that is. And then peak or RMS mode, not there. So it's a completely different type of working method. Also, there's so basically the way that this compressor works is that you put up this compression knob. So you put it up, and that's the amount of compression you get. You can then choose some cool things. You can choose some wow, in which your whole mix will start moving around. So let's just put this up, and let's take it out of phase and put wow in. See? And you can put phase in it. So we're going to use that later on, but right now I didn't need any wow. Then we have a low-fi knob. And lo-fi, another word for lo-fi is putting a blanket on a track. It's just a filter. But we can take this lo-fi and then change the type over here. Anyway, I ended up not really using that lo-fi too much. It's only more of a filter than anything else. And then we have a dry and volve button. This is dry wet, and here's your attack release. That's pretty much all there is to it, but you also have a sidechain and you have a digital reference, so you can get your compressor to work even harder. Okay, then you have high quality as well. I don't really notice the difference. Oh, maybe a little bit of top end, but that's it. So that's it for the compressor. The way I set it up was, I looked at it and I was like, what is all this? And then I figured out there's a button here. But I immediately went over to the settings here. And the master bump was pretty much, I put it on and it was just pop and the drums sat perfect. So master bump for this thing here, it just worked. So let me just go over here. Go to B, just see what master bump really looked like. Let's see how much of the same it was. Okay, so I changed it a bit. Yeah, but not that much. See? So this is my setting. That's their setting. Meh. Oh yeah, okay, mine is a little bit more different. Okay, so that's the compressor setting to get fucking fat drums. So there's no compression going on any of these individual parts. So I have a kick here, a vocal scream that was actually part of Yuubelong. That's the artist, a very talented artist. So there's no compression going on anything except for the tom. But let's first start with the kick. So the kick drum, I like it, but I have a love-hate relationship with this kick drum due to the tone that it has. Ooh, there's a tone there. I'd rather cut that out, but I decided instead to use the CQ. And what the CQ does from, well, at least what it did for me, was distort the channel like nobody's business. So you have a drive knob here, and you can turn that down. If you turn that up, you get that. Now, the only thing I really wanted from this kick drum is to have more top end. So with it on, see, there it is. Now it disappeared, and there it is again. So what I did was I put a 15 dB high gain on it, and it sounds absolutely mental, but I don't care. I wanted that kick drum to not have that blanket effect. Then with the mid, you can select your frequencies here. I put 5.6. Again, I added dBs, and into low, I also added a tiny little smidgen to get that. It doesn't do exactly what I want. It still is not like the one thing I really want to have, but it's definitely working. Next to that is DQ8, just to take away the side information so that you don't have a kick drum with side information. And after that is an EQ8 that is turned off. Fantastic. The claps are doing something pretty cool as well. And the cool thing is that, so there's a reverse piccolo pick snare, reverse piccolo snare, and that's just going into the other piccolo snare. So I have a weakness for piccolos snares. When I used to be a drummer, I bought one from a store that was closing in America. And I had a tiny little piccolo snare, and it always reminded me of Questlove's snare. So I always find this a really cool snare drum. Now, with the snare drum, nothing special is going on. It's being sent over to this short room, which is made up out of this little plate that is set to its shortest amount of time. Sounds good. Now, with that, the cool part that happens, actually, is right here. Hear that? There is an automation to go to little plate number B, or letter B, and that is an effects reverb, which the little plate is feeding into Filter Freak. And that's causing it to go. So every single time it hits that, it'll be a slightly different delayed sound. And I always like to have my reverbs to do something, either go panning left or right or something cool. If it's an effects reverb, you know, use it. It's being sent like that so that I still have the original smack, because if I would put this effects reverb with the filter freak directly onto the claps, then it would just kind of disappear. Alright, so enough of that. Let's go over to this clap where some cool stuff is happening. So it's nice and wide. But without this, bit boring. Nice, there it is. So what this is doing is a little trick that I often use, and it's a frequency shifter that has a wide knob, and then I use an LFO, which used to be from Max for Live, but now I think you have a Ableton 10 version of this as well. What you can do is you can map over here, so there will be a button there normally, and you can map it to this spread knob. And then what you do is you click on the wide knob, and what then happens is the following. So before, this song sounded like, sounds like that. Meh. And then you put this on. Ooh, now it's on the left and the right, and then you put this on. And now it's always moving. So it's, again, it's a tiny little trick. Just like this effects reverb, there's a continuous alteration of pitch going on. And the only reason this clap is here is because it sounds really, really cool together with the piccolo thing. And it's wide, so it's not in the center with the snare. It's just wide. And it's continuously changing. Gotta love it, but gotta keep those changes subtle. Ghost snare, nothing else happened to that. It's just still being filtered a little bit. Then we have an open hi-hat. Something very cool is happening to that. Watch this. Hear that? So that's being sent to the crystallizer. As you can see, this send is full whack on crystallizer. It has no settings on default except for this pitch is moved down a tad. What this does is it does granular synthesis. And granular echo synthesis means the echo part is that it echoes so quieter, you know? And the granular synthesis part is that it takes the input of it and reverses it in different orders. And it's just a really cool little trick to make the mix a little bit more interesting. So without that, with it. Okay, but behind that is the LFO tool, just to keep that like bump in movement on 1/4. All right, then we have something cool again. We have the Echo Boy, which you saw in the previous one. I set up so it would have that cool shaker effect. That late type of dragging feel. Here, it's dragging a bit. Now there's a compressor here, which is doing a sidechain function to the sidechain channel. And what that does is go through this. And what I've done here is I took the kick pattern and I copied that. So here's the kick pattern. And I just took this last part and dropped them in as well. Because what the kick pattern is doing is that it is keeping the main groove going. So check this out. If I do this without, it's not really a shaker. Now it has a groove where the shaker is actually grooving with the whole track. So for me, this works really well. If it would only be sidechaining on the kick drum, for instance, it would be kind of shit. If you put it on the sidechain, it just has that cool vibe to it. So I like that. The ghost glitch thing is still there, and then we have the tom. So this tom is pretty cool. So this is doing something cool again. So check this out. First we use the devil lock, which is some sort of hardcore compressor thing. This is the setting here. Meh. And then the filter freak again. This does something pretty cool. It just keeps the groove going. It's sexy, and as you can see, it's KB's groove too. I haven't done anything to it. So basically, whatever part you would listen to in this drum group, it's continuously focused on moving, and whatever part you listen to, it's continuously focused on keeping that bounce. So every single part is connected to be heavy on the bounce part. So everything is on that bounce. Anyway, then we have, last but not least, a little bit of an Aphex vintage exciter. I know that's not Sound Toys or good Hertz, but for me, this is a must-have in most of my mixes. All my mixes, it will have this little exciter. It just gives that little bit of top end. Okay. But that's it. That is all the magic settings of the of this drum part here, and everything is working synergistically together. Also, the valve compressor and Sound Toys, it's a match made in heaven. I really like it. It's definitely, without these two plugin companies, I would not be able to get this fat sound. So, in next week's episode, what we'll do is we're going to put a bass line underneath. We're going to actually play a whole bass line in. And after that, it's just going to be everything else, which won't be too difficult. I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Patreon supporters, you can download this when I'm done with it. And if you want to support the channel, please go over there. Much love. Take care. Peace out. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.